So, konnichiwa. It's the only greeting I know for everyone at all the times of the day that we're joining us. And this is my pleasure to be with you today. My name is Jim Ripley. I am honored to be the president of WASB. And we want to welcome you to our second repertoire roundtable. What we do with this time of year is very special, and many of us would have been enjoying some time in Chicago this week, and as part of that experience, have a chance to meet old friends and certainly to talk with composers about their music, about their most recent music, about some things that might be happening in their lives. And we're not able to do that easily this week, or as much as we'd like. Also, during this week, many of us would have gotten together for a wonderful WASB reception, a chance to again meet and be as part of this association that we love. And for that reason, it gives us a chance to do both today. And one of the things that reception offers us an opportunity to do is to actually recognize some of the accomplishments, some of the things that have been a part of the organization. And one of the things that I want to take a second to do is to actually raise a glass and honor the memory of the great Peter Bucher, who passed away this year. Peter was a early member in WASB, one of the originators, and also was a board member for two different times. Um, I love the word instigator because it's someone that's willing to go out and to make things happen. And Peter was all of that and a wonderful friend. So here's a toast to Peter Bucher. Um, Going forward, what we had a chance to hear was the first part of one of Martin Ellerby's most recent pieces, the Little Symphony of English Carols. And we wanted to begin with a seasonal piece and also gives us a chance to kind of move forward now into this wonderful season after leaving our virtual Midwest. Um, our session today is going to be moderated by Jack Stamp and Jeff Matthews, two wonderful friends and also great friends of Martin's. We will have time for participant questions. If you want to go ahead and type in different questions as the session progresses, we will answer those and get to those in the last half hour or so. But the first hour is to allow the session to happen with our guests today. Uh, Also, if any of you are joining us on the Facebook live stream, I'll try to also get into that and moderate any of the comments that you might have questions in that regard. Um, but without any further ado on my part, let me introduce to you um, Jack Stamp and Jeff Matthews and our distinguished guest for today, Martin Ellerby. Jack.
Thanks, Jim. First, I want to say how honored I am that Jim asked me to moderate this roundtable discussion and repertoire discussion. But what makes it doubly rewarding for me is the fact that the composer we're talking about is a friend whom I respect both as a conductor and as a composer. I was reminiscing that Martin and I met 27 years ago at a BASB conference in Huddersfield in 1993, where Paris Sketches was premiered. And that was the first I had ever heard of Martin Ellerby. And we've remained in contact. And it's one of those relationships that we don't see each other for a while. And when we see each other, we just pick right back up. And you know what I'm talking about. So it's good to see you all here. I see some dear friends in the group of checkerboard. Looks a little bit like Hollywood Squares here, Hollywood Band Squares. I do have one concern though. I saw that when Jim made his toast, what several of you were drinking, and it looks like some of you are already tanked up for this, which scares me about what you were expecting. So nonetheless, say hello to our guest, Martin Ellery. Martin, it's good to see you again, my friend.
Thank you very much. I'm purely on water, honestly.
I saw that. I saw that. Probably Linda's back there drinking, your wife. So I don't know how many of you, some of you may have tuned in because you know of Martin Ellerby, and maybe some of you tuned in because you don't know of Martin Ellerby. And there's not a lot, when you look at Martin's new website, there's not a lot about his biography. And I thought it'd be interesting to find out, Martin, from you, I mean, how you actually got started into music as both a young person. I remember you told me recently that you actually played in a brass band, and then why you chose music, and then why you chose composition, and you studied with Joseph Horowitz, who I think is still alive, isn't he?
Yes, very much so.
In his 90s, but a very influential composer and teacher. So go ahead, Martin, if you don't mind giving us a little background information on your early years.
Sure. As we progress, you'll probably all become more understanding of my technophobia and the fact that I still use pencils actually, but I have got a computer, but it's an old Archimedes Sybelius with floppy disks, and it only works because I've got the Quran and the Bible and every other religious tomb next to it. But more of that later. To go back to my upbringing, it was just a very ordinary mining village, town, place, and that. And at school, it was the first time when I went to a secondary school, which would be about the ages of something like 12, say, to 16, or maybe a bit younger. And they had peripatetic music teachers in those days in our country that came in and taught a wide range of instruments. And some of my friends in the class decided that they were going to do the trumpet. So I just followed them with the herd instinct. And lo and behold, I had a trumpet then, and lessons with Mr. Leader, who I still actually stay in touch with, and his wife. So it shows you the bonds that music can make immediately. Now, what some other clever people in the town did was they found out who was playing these sort of instruments. And if they were brass instruments, then they got you to come down and have an audition, see if you were suitable for the local miners' welfare band, which was a brass band, a British traditional setup. And most communities, certainly mining communities, all had these of various qualities. I have to tell you, I won't name the band, but mine was pretty bad actually. And it was certainly not assisted by my third cornet playing. And also, what it was a brilliant piece of community in every sense of the word. They looked after you. We were allowed to go on the band bus to little tours and things. We could do absolutely everything, but we couldn't go into the bar because we were only like 14 or something. And in this country, you had to wait 4 years to be legal. So apart from that, everything was fine. And it was a good thing just to get out. You know, in those days, we had a television and whatever, but you only had a few stations. Nowadays, of course, you can live in your house and just watch TV all day and never go anywhere. So it's a little bit of a thing that doesn't really exist as strongly any longer. But what it did for me is I was playing and I just enjoyed listening to the different pieces because we did go to contests. Contests were quite an important thing. It was either contests or a lot of very, very light music concerts in community halls and such places. And I enjoyed the test pieces. They were the lower section test piece, but even so, there were some nice pieces in there. And I just liked to watch how it all fitted together as a big music making machine, and I wanted to know how to do it. And I think that's what caused my interest in brass bands. What I remember certainly later on. Now, this performing experience of mine didn't last too long because they promoted me to second cornet one day. And I played that one rehearsal as second cornet and resigned on the spot, so they couldn't put me back on third cornet. I'd have to go back downhill again. And I didn't go back to playing ever again. So what I did then, I went to a secondary school and did A-level music, which we did in those days. And after that, if you wanted to take it seriously, you went to a college. Fairly standard procedure. But I was a pretty weak performer. I enjoyed writing music. I just made some very basic sort of forays into composition at that particular time. So I didn't really start writing anything that was played until I was about 16. And it was actually the wife of the initial peripatetic teacher that encouraged me to do so. And I wrote little cantatas for school choir and piano. And we did, one was actually called Christmas Scene. And we actually played it at a few churches in the local area at the time, which was all very good. It meant that when I got to the auditions at college, I did have some pieces to take with me and also some rudimentary cassette recordings in those days. But I went to the London College of Music first to do a basic degree, and you weren't allowed to do composition in those days as a first study. You weren't allowed to do it as a second study, actually. So I took extra lessons, which I paid for myself, so that I could do the theory diplomas, because there was no way I was going to be able to get the performing one. So I'd have something in my back pocket. The other reason for doing the degree was because that was the only way you could get the funding from your local authority. So I bided my time, and I did. It was a great time. I was in London. It was novel for me to be in such a place. I went to concerts in the most fine halls nearly every other day or whatever, and then it became a little bit more serious, and I went to the Royal College as a postgraduate for 1 year, and I went there because I particularly wanted to study with Joseph Horowitz. That was my target professor. I went for an audition. I had to take some pieces. I had a few more, a little bit more higher quality pieces by that time, oboe sonatina and some songs and piano pieces principally. Nothing of a larger scale at that point. And I got in with Joe Horowitz, and I had a great year with him since that time, which would be 79, 80 overlap year. And I've been friends with him ever since. And we keep in touch. In fact, I spoke to him only the other day. He rang me up about it. I always send him my new pieces and my new recordings, and he always rings me back with his complete written up appraisal, which he recites to me, and I have to just sit there hoping and praying that we still get a tick in the box. But that's a real great sign of a good teacher, in my opinion, that we can do that. After that, I did actually request him if I could stay on for another year, because I thought it was important to make the education stretch as far as you could and not face the reality of having to work out how you earn to living as a musician or a composer. But what happens is I got a scholarship. He wouldn't do this unless I studied at the college, and I got a scholarship, which meant I had to go to had to find somebody else. So I went to a man who didn't teach in any institution, and I went to his house for a year in London again, and his name was Wilfred Josephs, and he was more principally well known with the public for a lot of TV and film music in this country, and also by the time it was a serious classical composer, but I'd heard his clarinet concerto on the radio, BBC broadcast, and I thought this is the kind of composer that I would like to study with. I couldn't go to the art serialists in those days because I already determined that I was principally tonally based, and I would have to stick with that kind of thing. Although in later years, I toyed with all sorts of idioms as experimentally, etc. So basically, I was. That's my official academic career over, and I was then back home again and wondering what to do. So that's the key problem for most musicians, or certainly for composers, that I had to then work out how do you actually get a job? What is a job? How do you do this kind of thing professionally, ultimately? Do you want to keep moving this on a little bit, Jack, by prompting me in other areas, or shall I just carry on?
Yeah, we'll switch a little bit now to some of the music. And obviously this is the World Association of Symphonic Bands and Ensembles. So I think we'll move over and let Jeff take over here for a moment. Jeff Matthews is a member of the board of WASB and has been I know it's been your longtime friend. And Jeff, let's have you lead us through Martin's wind band music.
Sure. Many of you know, or maybe don't know, Martin has a large catalog of music that's out there and available. Recently, however, he's put out quite a bit of new music, so I thought we would look a little bit at that. And I do want to say quickly that this is my favorite topic, is to talk about Martin Ellerby's music. I presented on his music many times, and my dissertation was on his music and things like that. So it's just a pleasure for me to be here and be a part of this. So thanks, Jim, for the invite. And I know you're anxious to hear some music. So here we go with technology. I'm going to share my screen, I hope. This sound. This is from a new piece by Martin called Five Manx Romances, which is about the Isle of Man and some sights and sounds on the Isle of Man. And if you'll give me a thumbs up, if you can hear this, that would be awesome. So here we go. The Lady Isabella. I think one of the things to point out is Martin's use of color and the way that he uses instrumentation. As we go through these scores, you'll be able to see these windows, I call them, these spaces where there's lots of rests. And that's what generates, I think, this amazing tone color change in his music. Okay, here we go. About a thumbs up. Are we hearing it? Yes, I think my favorite part is the last measure right there, actually. It's lovely. Oh, good. Yeah, so just a lovely work, and I hope you enjoy as much as I do. It's one of my favorites of his newer pieces. Again, that one is Five Manx Romances. By the way, I'm going to put in the chat a website. That's where if you can look in there. CaneRiverMusic.com is where these new pieces by Mr. Ellerby are available, and the recordings and the perusal scores are all there, and you can click on those and listen to the full piece if you like. So scores and recordings all at CaneRiverMusic.com. And there's okay, So, Martin, you have anything to say about that piece?
Well, that's particularly one of my what I call water music movement, because the actual Lady Isabella is a water wheel or pump of some description. A very, very famous feature on the Isle of Man, one of their key icons. I went over there, actually. It was a commission from the Isle of Man Wind Orchestra for one of their centenaries or something, or certainly commemoration. And they took me around all the key sites, and then I just had to work out which would make up, whether it was 3 movements, 4 or 5. It ended up being 5 in the end, of which that one was one. I didn't want to call it, it's called in Isle of Man the Laxey Wheel, but it's such a tourist attraction, I didn't want to put that title on it. So whilst I was walking around it, I did notice they had these plaques on it saying it was opened by the Lady Isabella, who was the daughter, who was the wife of the governor at the time. So I thought that was a much better sort of title to call this thing the Lady Isabella. And that's why it does what it does as far as I'm as a composer is concerned, and all those little bit of watery things that go on in it. Obviously, the other movements concern themselves with a variety of other things.
Yeah, I think one of the other things I like about Martin's compositions are this sort of commitment he has to the suite. 5 movements, 4 movements, 6, whatever, sometimes only 3, but these suites are great for teachers like me. You know, you may want, maybe you'll do all 5, maybe you'll find the 3 that you really like, and you'll pick those 3 and play those, or the one that you really like, because there's a variety of music in each movement, and they're typically pretty short too, so you can build your own suite in there if you're interested. Okay, Jack, do you have anything, or you want to hear some more music?
Well, I want to say to Martin, I've noticed in a lot of your music is, I won't say programmatic, but it certainly is somewhat regional, or it's about a certain area or something. It's not necessarily, again, strictly programmatic. Here's the story. And I wanted to ask you about a couple things. One, because we talked about this briefly the other day when we were setting up for this, and your Paris sketches and the idea of the typecast one-hit wonder problem that some composers have, and the idea that how to get your other ideas out there, and then also why do you feel this need as a composer to share like the Isle of Man and the Cry of London and these other areas of your travels?
Well, I think the honest answer, which is all you want, is the fact that I find it difficult to just write Allegro con brio or Andante con moto and know what to do. But if I call it Pigalle, for example, because I've been there, the whole setup is a scherzo to start with, and then I've got something else to cling on to, and I use them as spurs. That's probably a good word for it. It's something to latch onto that I can build a whole thing out of. So in the case of Paris Sketches, which is in 4 movements, I had to find 4 things that I felt musically attracted to. Now, in that particular city, lots of composers did pass through it. So in a sense, and the subtitle for it, which doesn't often get put with it, is Homages for a Band. So it is actually, it tips a wink in various ways, or, tips its hat towards other composers, Ravel, Debussy, Berlioz by absolute quotation, and that kind of approach. Then I find I've got some sort of structure or a framework to hang a piece onto. I tried really, really hard last year, and I did actually write a piece that was abstract, and I had trouble with it because I kept wanting to put subtitles all over it, and I have to tell you, I failed in the end. I did do it, but when I wrote it, I was thinking of the structure of the piece and not in anything in particular. So although it has still got subtitles, they're not as they don't relate to actual places. Because what I like about the subtitle and the title is the title leads you into the piece, and the subtitles are the sort of macrocosm of the larger element. And then you get inside this, and you can play a movement. I mean, for example, Pigalle has been picked out of that Paris Sketches and played by itself, and that's fair enough. And obviously, it would fit into four movement suite if you want to do the whole thing. So people can latch on to a little bit more than just, as I said at the beginning, tempo titles, which may be fine for some other composers. But all I can tell you is how I react to things personally, and that's one of the reasons why my entire repertoire nearly is titled and subtitled. I think we had the word the other day, Jack. It was impressionistic. It was a more kind of classy term.
Well, yeah, not strictly as Debussy and that movement in art, but as you leave impressions of these places rather than here's the Arc de Triomphe and here's the Eiffel Tower and things like that. Yeah, I think that's important to know your music.
The thing is, after Paris Sketches, the immediate next commission which came out of it, it was Colin Touching from Warwick University at the time, and he said, "I want you to write a piece that is not what you've just written." And I said, "That's perfect commission, because that's the way I'd like to operate. I do not need to go there again so quickly." At the time, of course, when you write a piece, you have no idea whether it's going to take off or what's going to happen to it. Paris Sketches actually did take off in the sense that it has probably had the most performances of any of my pieces, with the exception of my arrangement of Dvorak's Largo, which is cheating a little bit. So the next piece I wrote was Donna Novi's Parchment, which was a commemorative piece for the end of the Second World War, peace in Europe, and it was a completely different approach. It did have within it, though, internal subtitles, even though it's in one span. I had to latch it onto a sort of structure that embraced this, what was peace in Europe, etc. And after that, the various commissions came in, and people would say, "We want a piece like this or a piece like that." And the only thing I would regret about that career of some, I don't know, 40 odd pieces, what it is, was that I only ever got called by the top end standard of players. Not I think I had 2 commissions for, well, I don't like to use the word lower standard or anything like that, but it's just a technical level, I suppose.
Yeah, younger players.
Yeah, whatever, that kind of thing. And those 2 pieces, Tales from Anderson and Silent Movie Suite, were actually written for bands that I had to come down. I had to work out how to get a sound I wanted with a less able technical level.
Hey, Martin, that's a great segue right here, actually, I think, to this next piece of music, if you'd like to move into that.
Let's do it.
All right. So this is Wassail Dances by Martin Ellerby. It's the 3rd movement, I think, also. And this is very accessible. Again, one of the movements, some of the other movements are harder, but this one would be very accessible for, as Jack characterized, the young players. Probably have to have a good trumpet, but let me get this shared for you. Give it a listen, and it's just 2 minutes or so. So we'll just go ahead and ride through the whole thing if I can get it started here. Play. There we go. I'm assuming we have sound.
Yeah.
Louder, please. Louder, please.
Yeah, and again, there we go. That's next. um,
Right. Well,
again,
if you like,
go ahead.
because that movement is called Harvest Hymns, and it quotes a few English hymns in it. I've changed the modality quite a lot, and without doing direct quotations. But you see, it's interesting word, isn't it? Wassail. What did you call it, Jeff?
Wassail, I suppose.
There, yeah, and it could be called wassail. I mean, which is a bit strident, I think. So I tend to call it wassail. It doesn't really matter. But the thing is, around here, I was invited to a wassail by a farmer from my local church, and I went to this very strange thing. I mean, it's really a curiosity, but it comes with food and drink, which is interesting. And shotguns are going off and all sorts of things, and they hang toast in the trees to encourage the birds to come and do all these things. So I was already picking up lots of ideas for a set of dancers. I wrote them without commission because I liked this farmer so much. He's got an apple drink. He does make cider, which is the alcoholic one, but the apple juice is really nice, and it's a wide variety of different apples, and I get so much of it. So I thought I'll pay him back and I'll write him some wassail dances, which is what happened. But I mean, how many people would think of a subtitle called Toasting Trees? Insane, isn't it? You just would never think of such a thing. But I've got a photograph of this, and the toast is in the trees, and that's one of the little things. So for a more kind of fun movement, Toasting Trees became a subtitle, and Harvest Hymns is obviously has to honour the kind of. If you read the words of the hymns, they're quite important. They are celebrating this particular harvest season. And so I got onto a completely different subject purely by chance of meeting this farmer who invited me to his wassail.
Hey, Martin, I was thinking something here, and this is not meant as a dispersion to your colleagues nor to you. Just an observation I think I'd like you to comment on, in that a lot of your music doesn't sound British necessarily. In other words, you have somewhat of an international sound. When you want to sound British, you can. Unlike some of your colleagues that you can always say, well, that sounds like a British composer. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you don't necessarily set out to sound British or not British, but have you thought that idea that your eclecticism is more an international sound rather than necessarily a strictly British sound? And how do you approach that?
Yeah, well, when we get to the string pieces later on, I mean, I see one of them, the pieces that Jeff is playing, is subtitled Tributes. So I am parodying, in a sense, or honouring, tributing certain composers. You'll be able to tell who they are out as soon as you hear them. But the thing is, from square one, I had a very great interest in buying LPs and scores, and I didn't look what country they came from. I was only interested in the sounds of the music. So I've now got a very big music library, and it consists of nearly every country you like. I mean, I adore the Russian sound of the classics, the Tchaikovsky, but right through to the Prokofievs and the Shostakovich and the Schnittkas and whatever. But I mean, even in America, where the first time I heard Roy Harris's Third Symphony, it was only because it was coupled with the Copland Third Symphony, Leonard Bernstein Deutsche Grammophon recording. Well, I mean, I liked the Copland, but it was the Roy Harris that was doing things to me. I just couldn't believe how he made it so tight, such a beautiful thing, single movement span, although it's in parts within it, but very interesting sound and very unique. I mean, I've been through nearly all of his other symphonies have been performed, but that's the one I keep coming back to. I think there was one called the Gettysburg, which I rather liked at one point. You cannot get the scores for these things, though, unless you've got special entry to some society or something. So I've nearly got everything by Aaron Copland because it's published by Boosier and Hawkes, and that's already available. But this is a kind of dilemma, isn't it, for these things about publishing and the availability? Because that Roy Harris symphony, to go on to something like, I really wanted that score, it's a Sherman publication. Took a bit of finding. And it was the only one, only piece I've got it's the only score I've got by Roy Harris, apart from the Gettysburg, which I got from a higher library. And somehow, I don't know how this happened, it just happened to be passed by a photocopier when I was at university, and I've got a copy of it now. But
yeah, you know, those Schubert scores, back when I bought them, my Roy Harris Third Symphony was $3. And all they did was change the price on the cover. And I think it's like 25 now, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about publishers, couldn't we? Sorry, Jeff. But
the thing is, Jack, to go back to your question, is that I listen to, and I continue to have a very good appetite for listening to lots of music. I'm not trying to steal it or copy it or anything. It's just that I taught for the RAF for 16 years, and I had to teach from medieval music to rock and roll. It was the entire history of music. It's unheard of for a professor to know this. So obviously I was going to fail, but I used the opportunity to really categorize my library in periods and things. So I do listen to lots of Renaissance choral music, but I don't think I could take necessarily from anything from that other than the amazing contrapuntal techniques that they have there.
Hey, Jack, I think we have another perfect segue here, talking about Martin Sounding International. This next piece was premiered in Spain and has a Spanish flavor, and it's called Menorcan Dances. It's a 3-movement suite, and I'm going to play you the first movement, which is a lively, almost fanfare type movement. The second movement is just lovely, a beautiful thing, but it's about 5 minutes long, so we didn't want to use it today. But again, you can find it all at CaneRiverMusic.com. And this is Menorcan Dances. Yours truly with my Northwestern State University Wind Symphony. there's that first movement. Again, it's actually one of my favorite of Martin's newer pieces is that Menorcan dances. It's a lovely trio of movements, loosely based on Spanish dances, but maybe Martin, you want to talk a little bit about the piece?
Well, the thing is that it was, I'd never been to Menorca until this one time Linda wanted to go on holiday there. So I went along with the whole idea, wondering, well, it'll be okay, I'll find a piece in there somewhere. And you get all these Spanish titles, I couldn't pronounce any of them. So I had to think of another thing. So I just looked into some dance styles, actually, and they're not really that pure. So don't go looking for spot-on examples of fandangos, etc. But it's got the essence of all that. That's it. It's only meant to emulate something. It's a really nice place, actually. It was great that you could play it, Jeff, in Spain, because Menorca is part of Spanish sovereignty. And that was nice to have a premiere. And I was just thinking when I saw Keith Allen on earlier, that Keith was meant to be doing the British premiere this year with his Birmingham Symphonic Winds in Warwick. And it was March and it had to be cancelled because of the virus. So it's probably when Keith gets around to doing it, we'll be lucky if it's a year after the actual planned British premiere, which just goes to show you how devastating to music this whole thing's been, as an aside.
How about, Jack, what if we move on, and you had a request to
I want to
talk about the brass band a little bit.
Well, yeah, I want to talk to him a little bit. First, what I wanted to say was, for me, as a music educator, I've always respected composers, and it seems that those composers whose music I like know a lot about music. I say about music, know a lot of composers in their music, and not like Martin said that they steal, but there's a depth of knowledge in literature. And I've always found that those composers that I like have that characteristic about them. I don't know, I was looking here and I see a bunch of my trumpet player friends here. And I don't know if you saw a recent Jim Stevenson post that Jim Stevenson was working in Finale and he went away to another screen. And when he came back, all the trumpet parts on his piece were up an octave. And I thought it was amazing that Finale could actually program instrument attitude into their software. It was interesting. The trumpets would take it off, yeah. But seriously, back maybe 25 years ago, I had a music history teacher say to me, Jack, you're not a real composer until you write a string quartet. And maybe we'll get back to Martin chamber music in a minute. But Martin, I'm saying this somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but then not really. You're not really a British composer until you've written for brass band. And some of the greats, right? Elgar and Vaughan Williams and Holst and Jacob and Rubra and Bliss and all these British composers have written for brass band. Was it a natural thing because you said you played in a brass band that you would either write for brass band or be asked to write for brass band? Well,
I'll tell you why. I'll just say to start with, I have a 7-year commission to write a string quartet. I've just not finished it because it's frightening. When you've listened to all the string quartets that I've listened to, and that can only be a small percentage actually of the number that have been written. Some of them are just perfection. Why bother? So I'm going to do it as a personal challenge, but it will be later. I'm working my way through, as we'll talk later, a series of sonatas, and I've done violin and viola so far. So I'm then going to do the cello. So I'm going to get myself there in installments. So I'll have nowhere to back out of with this string quartet that have commissioned it. Now, to get back to the essence of your question, the thing I liked about brass bands and wind bands in the first place is they were very large ensembles that allowed you to enter their world, unlike the symphony orchestra, which is very privileged. And I could get large scale pieces played by enthusiastic players who were happy to help you out, whatever. So that's what happened to me. The first two, I wrote 2 pieces back to back once. So Paris Sketches for wind band, which I wrote with a 2B pencil on Panopus music paper with a Stettler eraser in my hand for ready use. And I wrote a piece for brass band called Natalis, which was a symphony for brass and percussion, I call it. I gave it a little bit of a classier subtitle. I thought it's actually the brass band. I'll interpret it as a large symphonic brass ensemble with percussion. Which, I mean, you can call these things all things, can't you? I mean, how many different titles are there for a wind orchestra, a symphonic wind band, or blah, blah, symphonic, you call them different things, whatever. But the reason I got into those is I wanted to write on the big canvas. Before this, I'd written a requiem for orchestra, symphony orchestra. It was the same orchestration as the Haydn Nelson Mass, because that was what was going to be in the second half. If you know that piece, it's for strings, timpani, and 3 trumpets, and the choir. And I had a single soloist, and I got an opportunity to write a 1-hour requiem, which was a great thing. It was played once. Because of that piece, though, the professional orchestra that played it commissioned me to write a clarinet concerto, where I think I broke the world record for a little while. I had 4 performances. They took it on a tour. But after that, that was the end of that. And of the 12 orchestral pieces I'd written in those earlier years, they got the single, the first and last performance, really. And this concerned me because you cannot make a career out of that in any sense. So I realised that the brass band, which I started off in first, was a good opportunity to write large scale pieces, big sounds and things like that. And then when I got the wind orchestra, which I met people through our organisation, BASBWI, which was a dream, because I went to a BASBWI conference because I'd orchestrated at the request of the publisher of that piece, Mycenas Music, to do a wind band version, because I'd written it for symphony orchestra. It's had a few performances over the years in that guise, but the majority of it comes from I'd made a brass band version and I made a wind band version, and that wind band version was the first piece I'd done an orchestration using the wind orchestra setup, and it was played at a BASBWI conference. It was actually in Manchester, where I'm speaking to you from now, at the Royal Northern, by a Scottish band, and I was then commissioned to do the BASBWI Consortium Commission, which was a really nice thing to get at the time. There was 6 bands involved in this, and they were all going to play this all from different parts of the country. I mean, the 6 performances in its own right was worth writing it for, and so that's how I got started into that kind of thing. And it was just the welcome that these organisations gave you, which I found it's a bit snooty, if I want to be honest, because there's a certain type of music you have to write in a certain idiom if you want to get on with the leading orchestras, because for some reason I can't fathom out. It's not permissible to not write in the prescribed styles that they prescribe for you, I mean, look at the trouble Malcolm Arnold must have had over his career and the snobbiness, but now he's one of the most popular composers, and all these orchestras are playing him. It's a triumph.
All right. Hey, Jack, let's maybe check out. You requested Genesis, I believe.
Yeah, just 1 second, though.
Yeah,
As
sure.
you listen to this piece, now, Martin, this is Genesis, first movement of Genesis. This was a test piece, was it?
Yes, it's a test piece that mainly the serious pieces you can write for brass bands, as you know, Jack, is when you get test pieces, where they all get together and they have a single day and you can get 20 performances. I've been fortunate to write them for all the major contests over here. But the thing was, this one, Genesis, was commissioned by a great friend of mine, James Gourlay, who's an American resident now. And it was for a brass band in Switzerland. And it was their own choice. What they do in the Swiss, which is a much better idea, is there's a prescribed test piece, and then there's an own choice. And they play them on different days, or they play them one in the morning, one in the afternoon, or something like that. So I was commissioned to write this piece. James Gourlay was the guest conductor for it's brass band Tres Etoiles, I think it's called. And they won the contest, actually. So I was very, very popular with the brass band Tres Etoiles for a while. But when I submitted this work to the British Brass Band Association to see if it could be selected, or rather my publisher did, they lost it 4 times. So years passed by, and then when I wrote a letter and says, you've got to do something about it, you've got to tell me something, they just wrote back and said to me, no, it didn't excite us enough. So all I can say was that I think the first movement was one of my most exciting efforts, but I don't know what it would excite the committee. So that's just to give it a little look. They have to be technically demanding. This is the top section of brass band. So you've got to integrate into your writing certain things that stretch the technical ability of players. That goes without saying. Although I've always said that stretching the musical capabilities of them wouldn't be a bad thing sometimes. You know, the sense of ensemble and balance and all these kind of things, and listening to it, perchance. But I'll leave it there. Okay. It's the most political organization in entirety. The universe, the brass band movement, but it doesn't half sound great when they play.
To our colleagues here, I want you to, when I listened to this, I noticed something that struck me immediately that Jeff harkened on earlier in our roundtable here. So listen to this movement and tell me what you might hear.
All right, so Jack, because of the length, I took an excerpt. This is perfect. I took an excerpt that has both musical stretching and technique stretching for sure. So I think I got about 90 seconds or so here. Let's get, and if you want to play the beginning or anything afterwards, you just tell me, we'll find it. And there's the big finish, Jack.
Yeah, Jeff, for some of us, it's not very loud. I don't know if you can make it louder on your end.
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry to hear that. No, I'm as pumped as I can, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, the others are.
You probably couldn't hear what I was referring. But Martin, I want you to talk about this. But what I hear in your brass band music and what I love is the color. The problem with brass band is it's all brass. It's like writing a string quartet, right? You got pizzicato, you got mutes, and you got bows. And how do you change the color of a brass band beside mutes? And the opening of this piece, which I wish you could hear, there's a suspended chord that I swear to you sounds like woodwinds. And it's just the way he scored it, and it's amazing. But what I love about your brass band music is all the timbres and colors that you get.
Well, if I was to give you the lightweight answer, it depends what beer the players are drinking. because different parts of the country would have a different effect on the sound. But the honest answer is that you were right. It's a very monochrome sound, isn't it? It's just what can you do? You can put certain mutes in and things, but it's a really difficult question to answer. And one of the things about all those pieces, apart from Genesis, I have not subjected to what I'm about to tell you, but Philip Sparks said to me, you must arrange all your brass band pieces for wind orchestra, he says, because then they'll have a greater market and a longer life. There's 2 test pieces, Genesis and one I wrote later called Electra, for big competitions that I did not transcribe because they're difficult. But when you transcribe them, I didn't find the transcriptions at all difficult because I was going from no color to piles and piles of color with all sorts of percussion and other things. But I think the color in a brass band, it's subtle. You have to subtly extract it by various methods. And if you take a composer like Elgar Howarth, now he gets colors out of the brass band that I still find amazing, and how he does it. So they're one of the reasons why I would investigate quite a lot of scores. One composer that has had great a great longevity in the brass band world because he keeps reinventing the brass band is Edward Gregson. From his earlier days, one of the pieces that inspired me to want to write for brass band was one of his pieces called Connotations. Now, that was a test piece quite a long time ago, and it would be a championship test piece then, but now it must have dropped down 2 sections just because the band quality, the technical quality of the bands has increased so much they can walk all over it in a higher level thing. But he is constantly reinvented his approach to it. And I heard some, I can't remember if they were called elegies or something, recently at one of the Royal Northern Brass Festivals where a more serious repertoire is indulged in by several bands. It's a great festival for that kind of music, where he found colours again that I couldn't recognise very, very easily. So I think it's about the investigative qualities or the searching nature of the writers, Jack, to answer the question. You've got to want to keep trying to find something fresh in it, and it is there. I'm sure it is. It's a fantastic music making machine, the brass band. But as I said earlier, it comes with a lot of baggage, mainly the politics.
Right. But I think what we find in your music and across genres is the color. I mean, I think what makes Paris Sketches so unique is not that it was a new piece, but it was new sounds. I hate when a person says, "Yeah, you made a band not sound like a band." I don't like that. Or you made a band sound like the orchestra. You know, I'm a total band devotee. But what I'm saying is, you explore colors that create a new sound, and it's not just about orchestration. It's an entire mindset that I think spills over into your brass band writing, even though there are limitations there. And I think it's one of the great characteristics of your music.
Don't you think a lot of this is innate, that you can't be taught certain things? Because over the years I have taught composition, and I'm increasingly of the opinion that composition cannot be taught as the older I get. I think you can mentor a student or a younger, shall I say, a younger, less experienced composer, because we're all in the same boat, we're just different ages, and so forth. That's a great thing about Joe Horowitz. He never tried to make me write in his style. I went to him writing in his style, but he stopped me. And I think that's a mark of a good teacher. They're not trying to put their personal imprimatur onto yours and so forth. And like I say, a lot of this, I think it's inside of you. It just has to be brought out of you. When you go into what I call friendly environments, when I say the brass band is political, I mean the managements and sort of thing of the contest mentality. That's what I find difficult. It's not the players. The players are great. They just want to play music and retire to the bar. It's a great philosophy, and it works for them, and that's what they do. They have a wide range of conductors going from rather excellent, I think, to no thank you. It's a real extremes. and everything. But I think for writing purposes, one should keep trying to find something fresh. What I don't like about the music publishing industry, if you like, is when they give you a template. This is how you write an overture, or this is a band, this is an opener. It goes like this, and you do this, and you do, and stick to that because this is how we have big selling titles. Stan Kitchen once said, introduced me to somebody as one of our biggest selling composers, and I had to actually go and tell this elderly gentleman off. I said, you can't introduce me like that because it's in my vocabulary, that's an insult. I don't want to be a best-selling composer. I just want to get better at it and become a good composer. That's what I'm trying to do, not sell paper.
Yeah, you make an interesting point with Horowitz not making you sound like him. I had the opportunity years ago to interview Norman Delajoyo, and he studied with Paul Hindemith. And I said, I hear that Hindemith makes all of his pupils sound like little Hindemiths. And he looked at me and said, well, those without talent. I went, whoa. But I've always found the composition teachers gives you tools, but doesn't give you style, maybe. And go ahead.
Well, a good tutor should let you be free and should just monitor you a little bit and guide you in certain directions. I think that's what I tried to do when I taught students. And whatever. I mean, and I might have used some of my works as examples, but it's only because I knew my own works inside out and I could pinpoint certain things. I wasn't trying to make them right, like I was saying. This is how I solved a certain problem that's akin to what you're going through. So then I might do that. Otherwise, I would refer to the classical repertoire, which I mean the old contemporary art music type thing from the beginning and whatever. And you see, when I went to the Royal College, people laughed at me for studying with Joseph Horowitz because they were all studying with another guy who was much more, shall we say, with it. But it wouldn't have suited me. Why did I want to go and be some sort of clone of somebody else? That's not the thing. If you give a young composer, some confidence, they might find their own voice. They won't find their own voice at 18, in their early 20s. I think very few people do that. It comes with time, confidence, experience, and if you've got that, it will come out. I think it's very difficult for the composer himself to talk about what that effect is. I think it's what you as a listener, I mean, I can probably do it to you, Jack, and you can do it to me, but I can't do it to myself. I know that it's a really tricky one, but I don't go out trying to I like the challenge of writing music that stretches me, and I do it in various ways, but I don't go out to try and impress with sounds. I'm searching for new ways to do the same old thing, but didn't that always happen? You know, if you're writing a string quartet, you've got 4 instruments. So no one can change that.
You said something earlier that will segue us into our next section, but you said you don't want to be called a best-selling composer. You just want to get better at composing. And I believe, and I'm sure you believe, that writing chamber music does make you a better composer. And Jeff, why don't you take over here with Martin's chamber music?
Sure. I'm getting the video set and talking at the same time, so bear with me. But yeah, Martin has recently released a CD, 6 new pieces for string orchestra, actually. And they're wonderful pieces. Most of us are probably band people here, but these pieces of Martin's for string orchestra are just fabulous. And you may have other conductors, and you may have the opportunity, you may have string players in your programs, or you may do some conducting of strings. And if you do, I would suggest that you give these a listen because they're just wonderful. Martin, you want to do a prelude or anything? You want to just listen?
Well, of course, the string orchestra is not strictly chamber, but it's certainly a lower, less staves, I call it, less staves than the wind band and a brass band. As I got older, sort of the thought of just having 5 systems, 5 staves is really nice one, and getting it down. You can get a really big sound out of this if you think about it. And so I did start off writing chamber music in my earlier days, but I couldn't I didn't get the offers to write music from people other than the large ensemble. So in later life, I've returned to some of my former favorites, and I've just tried to get myself back into those kind of worlds again. And the piece I see up there now, this is a tribute piece. I think there's about 8 movements in this, and they're all very brief, and they're to various composers who had an effect on me. Some of them you won't have heard of, perhaps, like my teacher, W.S. Lloyd Webber. He taught me everything I know about counterpoint. A stunning composer. He could actually improvise everything I wanted to do on the keyboard. I mean, that's how to cheer you up, isn't it? But nevertheless, he did it in a very modest way. And I think the contrapuntal skills that I've tried to develop have come from that basic grounding, which was good teaching. Now, this first one, Jeff, is a tribute to Elgar. You will see that it leads towards that style. I'm not trying to copy them. I'm just paying tribute to some of my favorites. And I think the second one you got was to Holst, but they're not all to extremely famous composers. I do one for Eric Coates, who was master of light music, and one to Percy Faith, who was a great writer of a certain kind of recorded music. So there is a wide variety of what I call perfectly fine composers. Elgar, after all, did write a lot of light music himself.
All right. Well, let's check this out then. This is the first movement of a Bridgewater Serenade. Okay. All right. Good. So that's one of Martin's 6 new pieces for strings, and then there are 7 new ones coming out very soon. They're working on the finalizing the recordings now and getting the parts done and getting those out as well. So Martin's been busy not only in the wind band world but in the string world also. Jim, should we be checking on if anybody has questions at this point? Or Jack, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say to Martin, because you referred to kind of returning to chamber music now later in your career. Have you noticed something I've noticed, and I just want to get your perspective on it. When we started, we wrote music for free just to get it played. And then we
Yeah.
get established and we take commissions and we get paid. And in older life, then we start writing pieces again because we want to write them rather than get paid for them. Are you experiencing that as well? Is that some of this chamber music and string writing?
I've never written so much music for free. Listen, you can't see this particularly, but this is called my Hindemith project. And it's all the sonatas I'm writing for instruments and piano. So I use charts and things. I'm getting there. They don't sound like Hindemith, but it's the fact that Hindemith did attempt to write sonatas for all instruments, really, in several cases, multiple attempts at the same combinations. So I've got to 14 so far, and I've written 6 this year. I call them, in a sense, my COVID sonatas, because they've all been written during this terrible period. But I found it quite liberating to get back just to small groups of instruments. Like I said about the string orchestra, it's 5 staves. I know you can divide them and make them richer, but if you divide them, you make them thinner, actually, in many ways. You've got to be a little bit careful how you do it. It depends on numbers and everything. But I'm enjoying writing the sonatas. I hope to be able to certainly get up to 20. 20 is my first target ambition. So next year might see me through that position. We'll have to wait and see. It depends. And of course, at the same time, I'm planning to record them all. And we were planning to record. This is a bit of a downer at the moment because next week at the college, got people coming up from London to record my viola sonata, and Linda's going to do one of my new clarinet sonatas. But the London people have just been told they've got to stay in London. They've shut down the whole movement. So although it's not a total disaster, because we'll be able to revisit it sometime in the future, we just don't know when. You can't make any arrangements to do anything at the moment. And this viola guy and me, we've been exchanging things with the pianist or whatever. They're all geared up to record this on Monday. And now it's a case of got to go through the things and see how many refunds for the train fares and hotels we're going to get without any grief. It's terrible, but I won't be put off. The music has been written. The players are enjoying it, and they tell me so. So it's already okay. It's just a case of getting around this totally unpredictable situation that we all find ourselves in, and bit by bit. But what they can't do, they can't stop us writing music, can they? And I'm quite happy to be locked up. In fact, quite a lot of people suggested I should be, but we'll take it from there. I found it rather industrious period actually for writing music, but it's all been chamber. There was only one wind band piece, and that was an American commission. And I'm still, and that's fine. I did that earlier in the year, but the rest of the time I've been mainly writing sonatas and a whole bundle of choral music. So
Martin, I want to remind you that Hindemith did not write any sonatas for percussion, and I think there's a void there if you want to fill it.
You can't see my list here, Jack, because when it gets to the second period of my Hindemith project, it says these are extras that you might consider once I've done the key instruments: tuned percussion, mallet percussion, timpani by itself. You can even write sonatas for you could write a sonata for a wind quintet or 4 horns, can't you? I mean, that's a tradition. The Hindemith did that one, so did Tippett. So there are sonatas, it's only a title. But initially, I'm just trying to do them as an instrument and the keyboard, and we'll see, because this is why I like writing charts, because you start finding possibilities you never went to. I mean, I fancy writing a big percussion ensemble piece because they've got some great ensembles here at the college and whatever. And why not take advantage? You can get a load of young kids and students, young people, call them what you like, together and have a massive percussion ensemble, have a completely different thinking about something. So you keep refreshing yourself. You might refresh your audiences and your players too en route, and that's a good thing.
Jeff, why don't you play us that trombone sonata excerpt?
Sure. Let me grab that real quick.
we go.
There we go. All right.
I think it's time that we should open up the forum to questions from any of the participants, unless you have imbibed your drink and you're too lit up to be understood, or you slur your words. We'll try to interpret. But anybody have a question for Martin? Jim, you said you wanted to lead it off, so why don't you?
I suppose as the host, I get a chance to at least bring up one thing that I think is really near and dear to my heart with Martin's work, and that was related to a piece that he later told me that he was just wanting to write. There was something that was kind of on his mind, and something that we were able to bring forth as a WASB commission at a time when it was really important for us to have a new piece that that really moved our organization forward. And that the title of that work turned out to be A Soliloquy for Solferino. But maybe Martin, you could tell us a little bit about how that piece came to be, and especially the sense again of it was something that you had already kind of wanted to write, and then it just became an opportunity.
Well, yes, whenever I go away anywhere, I'm looking for titles, subtitles, things to write a piece of music about or something. Quite a lot of things I've written are epitaphs, which I consider to be just memorials to events that have happened, usually tragedies and things of that nature. But there was this battle fought in Italy in 1859, and out of it was born the Red Cross, which is the important thing, because this doctor was actually present the day after, and he saw all the casualties. And in those days, of course, with no anesthetics and stuff, people had terrible ones. And it caused him to try and set this up. And I thought it was a tribute to him and what he'd done for humanity, actually. Even, stopping the wars would have been a good idea, but that's harder. But I thought the whole thing, I could embrace it in some way and write a piece. And the idea of these epitaphs is it's more about the subject than the music, but it points the listener and the players towards the subjects and might say, "Oh, who was this guy, Henry Dumont? And how can we find out about him? What was he? He's called the Red Cross. I didn't know that. Let's have a look and have a read and a search around." And that's if it has that effect on them. And then the music has done another job, which is the aim.
And Jeff, I actually found the recording that Mark Heron did with the Royal Northern, which is just, again, a wonderful example of the colors that are available and the writing and the counterpoint within something that also is very moving. So Jeff, if you don't mind, could you give us a couple minutes of that? We don't have time to hear the whole thing.
Yes.
We've got about 5 minutes, but I would love for everyone to hear the opening of this, because this is one of my favorites,
Yeah.
but I'm biased.
All right. I'm hoping y'all have to give me a thumbs up on the sound here. I'm going to cut to the middle a little bit. Are we getting sound?
Yeah, that was it.
Okay, probably getting up against the time, huh, Jim?
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, wonderful sounds in that for sure.
So as we do need to close off, maybe Jack or Jeff or Martin, any closing statements that you'd like to offer?
Yeah, I just want to mention something that as we were preparing for this presentation today, there was a little conversation piece we had about how one can be a modern composer, but still have their foot on the ground, right? And still have their foot based in the classic, more tertian harmonies that that are part of our history, but still bring all of that forward with new sounds and new usages for those things and new colors for those same tools. And I think that Martin is a great example of that. Just beautiful sounds, gorgeous use of color, instrumentation, the way he stacks things in the band instrumentation wise. It's just amazing, and it's great fun. If you haven't conducted any of his pieces, it's great fun to work in those pieces as well and discover. Just changing the balance just changes all kinds of sounds and things in his pieces, and it's a wonderful experience. So if you get the opportunity to do it, I suggest that you do. Thanks everybody for the opportunity to be here and visit with you, Jack.
And Martin, why don't you just close with saying how, because we talked about just going off of what Jeff just said about how important to many composers the audience is, not just to self-express, but also to give the players something, and as well as you're trying to communicate to an audience.
Well, personally, I don't see the point of writing a piece of music to put in your drawer and just express how great an example of mathematical technique it was, because that's not me. Music is to be heard. People don't have to like what I write, but all I can do is present it. But I need to present it through players, and without players and conductors, if they don't take to it, then I'm not going to get played. It's not that I don't make any compromises. I mean, I've written some quite wild things as well, but that's only because I call that drama. I don't consider that to be trying to prove anything. It's just it's a contrast to the more lush, if you want to use that word, elements and so forth. I still find music a great pleasure, and I still enjoy the search for new things. By new, I mean what's new to me, new experience for me as a writer, not what might be new to history. All I can do is make my statements and leave behind my oeuvre, and we'll see. Oh, I won't see, but we'll see what happens in the future. Meanwhile, I mean, it's not a bad life, is it, to have done what you wanted to do?
Not at all. And with that, we will thank you all, and especially Martin and Jack and Jeff for being with us today. And some of the elements in the chat were just simply to wish you all a Merry Christmas, which I think is a great way to end. And Jeff, if you can also give us just a little bit of that last movement of the little symphony for chorus and band based on English carols, we will send you off in that fashion. Thanks again to everyone for joining us today. It's been great, and enjoy.